It's 4:03. You guys are late. Let's go. Find a seat. I'm just kidding. I was also late. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Hideo. Kojima understands America better than you do. Oh, come on. You're acting like you didn't miss last MAGFest. Come on. All right, come on. Let's act like it's been 2 years since we've been here. Let's go. So we're going to talk about Hideo Kojima. But first, a little sample.
All right, the truth then.
Preamble.
You're right about one thing. I do need capital and votes.
If you don't want to talk about
Wanna know
politics, you're in
why?
the wrong panel.
I have a dream. What? That one day, every person in this nation will control their own destiny. A land of the truly free, damn it. A nation of action, not words, ruled by strength, not committee. Where the law
know this one wasn't
changes
made by
to suit
Hideo,
the individual, not the other way around. Where power and justice are back where they belong. In the hands of the people! Where every man is free to think, to act for himself! Fuck all these lunatic lawyers and chicken shit bureaucrats! Fuck this 24/7 internet spew of trivia and celebrity bullshit! Fuck American pride! Fuck the media! Fuck all of it! America's diseased, rotten to the core. There's no saving it. We need to pull it out by the roots. Wipe the slate clean. Burn it down!
I mistimed the little note.
And from the ashes, a new America will be born. Evolved, but unchanged. The weak will be purged. And the strongest will thrive. Free to live as they see fit. They'll make America great again!
What the hell are you talking about?
2013.
You.
All right, let's get on with it. All right, simple outline. We're gonna start with some basic facts. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't act alone. Reality is not what you perceive. First Gulf War did not take place. And if we have time, we're gonna get to Hideo Kojima. We may try and fit it in at the end. Well, okay, you know what? Okay, sorry. We'll do a little Hideo Kojima up front as a treat. Is it? Do I still? Oh, too much. You want to hear me that loud? You don't want to hear what I have to say? All right. Born August 24th, 1963. Born to a pharmacist. He's the youngest of 3 children. So something you have to know when you study all his works and stuff is he's like an American file. Like he's into American cinema and stuff because he was born and raised growing up on that, like the golden age of cinema, and then going into like new age cinema of like the 70s, The Great Escape, sci-fi from the 70s and 80s, like the Terminator and all that. Because this really creates the language with which he then makes his games. Because his parents did like movie nights. And an interesting fact was they would not let him go to bed until the movie was complete. Like the opposite of like most parents, like no, you have to, we're gonna sit through all of Psycho. Like you cannot go to bed until this is complete. Him and his friends would take a Super 8 camera and go out and make little films. And his father sadly passed away when he was 13. But you wanna hear more about those movie nights, right? So what movies would he have consumed, right? It's post-World War II, right? Golden age of cinema, he's catching some of that. And then it's a lot of like, they're called new cinema of like the 70s and 80s in Hollywood. That's what you want. let's crank that down a little bit. Yeah, post-classical cinema is the term for it. Yeah, you've got like, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sweaty. I'm tired. But let's see some hands. This can be very interactive. So if you have things to say, stick your hands up. If I can't get to you, it's a time constraint. But if you have things to add, any things you want to talk about, like by all means. I actually have 2 small prizes. I'm going to give out at the end for anyone who has the like most insightful things that they add to this panel. So yeah, these films largely like influenced his later works. So you got Night of the Living Dead, Taxi Driver, that's like post-classical cinema. Like the Wild Bunch. Because you can't tell he's into Westerns, as one of the main characters carries around like dual 6-shooters. So in general, Hideo Kojima is an Ameriboo. He's like about American culture. Although he's very critical of American culture. So he falls in the lines of other Ameriboos who are very critical of America, such as, Ho Chi Minh. For real, Ho Chi Minh loved the founding fathers and like wrote to the president and about how much he loved like Thomas Jefferson, who isn't even like the best, probably maybe the worst founding father. So we get to Metal Gear. Released 1987. So this subverted normal game conventions. This is like one of the earliest, stealth games. I don't have to explain this to you. You're in a Metal Gear panel, Hideo Kojima panel. So like for the time, this game had a lot of narrative. This wasn't normal at the time. Like Mario, Pac-Man, things like that in the 80s. Games didn't really have like a very heavy narrative. And this one actually like even eschewed like the normal narrative structure a little bit with like different twists and things. For a game that's wild of this time. This game is thoroughly still on the rails, to put it lightly. It's still kind of just a traditional, gameplay-wise, it does break tradition. But we're not really approaching any levels of insanity quite yet. Metal Gear 2, basically just a more polished version of Metal Gear 1. And obviously, it borrowed strong themes from the American cinema we were talking about before that influences these works that you can see clearly. That's Kyle Reese from Terminator, essentially. But enough about that nerd. I know what we're really here for. That's right. It's 90s nostalgia. Yeah, right. Who's a 90s baby in here? Best decade, right? No, wrong. You're all wrong. All right. 90s was widely considered to be, it was the end of history. The Cold War was over. Everyone was coming together to be representational democracies. We were all just kind of building towards a better world all together. It's gonna be like the end of conflict. By end of history, it was like, things are gonna still happen. We're not gonna have any more wars, conflicts. No more nations are gonna fall. We're at the end. We're having a good time. We're doing the mambo. We're having a blast, You and your friends coming home from school, playing some Sonic. Oh my gosh, could it get any better than this? If I'm getting anything wrong, like a literary student or poli-sci person, feel free to correct me. I'm trying my best up here. But that was all wrong.
ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. The deadline has come and gone. The Iraqis are living in what President Bush calls borrowed time. It is no longer whether the war will start, but when. They know that in Baghdad as well as in Washington, there is a rumor every hour. Our first report is from Saudi Arabia. Here's ABC's Bill Rediker.
On the battleship Wisconsin, coordinated sea-air operations with British fighter jets, the firing of the ship's 5-inch guns, the testing of its anti-missile system, preparations for war.
Ready for war, sir. Ready for war. That's what this ship came over here to do.
General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
As the deadline approached, the commander announced the Wisconsin had been placed on DEFCON 2 alert, Defensive Condition 2, one notch short of war.
We should consider that hostilities are imminent. What does that mean? That means that we need to get ready to fight.
War declared. Except it never happened. There was no Gulf War. Don't leave yet. Just sit tight. Hold on. It's all gonna come together at the end. All the pieces matter. Some things too. Looking back at that clip, I want you to pay attention to just like the fighter jets. Like the news is very involved with the military at this point, and we're like showing off the technology, the fighter jets, the ships. You know, it's the news and the military kind of becoming hand in hand and kind of displaying. Look at our prowess. Look at the might of America, and it's just technology that's just far beyond anything we've had before. So, okay. If anyone can pronounce his name correctly, you might be in contention for one of the prizes at the end. I got a hand in the back. You were first, but I already forgot. Well, no, I got one in the back. I wanted John Boldriard. All right. All right, John Boldriard. Oh, you had something? ODST? Jean Boldriard. All right, that's okay. I barely speak English correctly, so I do apologize. I appreciate the input. So he argued that the first Gulf War never constituted a war. Was never actually intended full-out war at the time. Obviously, yes, like the physical actions that we just watched in the clip did take place. Like fighter jets bombed, people died, soldiers fought. But these never constituted a war. Neither America nor Iraq really intended to fight and win a war. This was just a conflict. It was for show. It was almost like a simulation of war. But the physical acts did act out. Like I said earlier, if anyone has any input, feel free to raise your hands. I might not call on you due to time constraints, but if I'm butchering that, feel free to correct me. Also, like I said earlier, this is the first time the news was really getting hand in hand with the military, and almost in the same way that during Vietnam we had very color film and these newsreels of like the gruesomeness of war coming to the home front. Now we have live feeds of the war. Like the reports were in Baghdad, in Iraq, like documenting this. It was the start of like the 24-hour news cycle. We watched this as it took place and was acted out. Also, going further on this is that while we, it's not quite a war because there was an end to it, but the hostilities never ended. The bombing of Iraq and like conflicts in the Middle East obviously took place throughout the 90s. But when we kind of call it a war, it's like, well, it's done. Bookend, we're done here. But these hostilities and conflict around the globe continued throughout the 90s. So, I know what everyone is thinking. Why don't we get back to Hideo Kojima? We'll get there when we get there. So, a lot of this is going to have to focus on Metal Gear and a little bit on Death Stranding because these are more the works that deal with American culture and critiques of America. But I did want to make a mention for Police Knots because it was revolutionary and pretty cool. Released in 1994, it's a text-based adventure. They take the narrative and world building, crank the dial to 100, and break it off. There's like you click on chairs and like an NPC's like, oh yeah, dude, this chair has like heat sensors and like heartbeat sensors, so it like conforms to your body and makes you most comfortable. It's like, what? You spent 10 minutes talking about a chair? Really? Who programmed this in? This is insane. I did want to mention it though because this is where kind of Hideo Kojima starts speculating about the future. And this is like a theme we're going to see like through Metal Gear and Death Stranding a lot. One thing, though, that I think is relevant to America is that it dealt largely around the illegal organ trade. And while that is more of a global problem that may specifically America, I think it's interesting that he started to kind of dig into like these problems of healthcare and like commoditization of people's like lives and health. Finally, though, let's get to it. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. It's Metal Gear. This is where we start to go off the rails. It's the first 3D entry in the series. It's a highly subversive narrative. This is insane. Spoiler warning, all right? Like, you got 3 seconds to get out of here. If you didn't expect this, I don't know what you're doing here. You've had like 30 years for this anyway. It's a highly subversive narrative. The entire plot is a lie. The entire mission is a lie. Like, from the start, it's like almost every time you're on a codec call or talking to an NPC, they're lying to you. It's canonically after the it's canonically after the Cold War. I say that because, like we were talking with French philosopher Jean Bailard. Nailed it. I think it's very interesting. I think Kojima started to think and explore these ideas of this false narrative of a world without conflict. And so I think it's important to note that it does take place after the Cold War. Can't get a straight answer for anyone. Like I said, it's just lies, 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 and lies. And this is a theme that is going to be expanded upon throughout the series and throughout his works. The themes of disinformation are just also overt. Within Metal Gear on MSX, that first one, they were there, but it wasn't quite like just like a punch to the face like it is here. This is where we start to get just a real post-truth through line throughout the series and his works. Yeah, the whole mission is a lie. Your friends lie to you, your enemies lie to you, your allies are enemies. Snake is played like your cousin's Xbox. Just trashed. Here's one example.
Weapon. The White House will have no choice but to surrender the Fox dye vaccine to me. Their ace in the hole is useless now.
Ace in the hole.
The Pentagon's plan to use you was already successful in the torture room. Snake, you're the only one who doesn't know. Ah, poor fool.
Who are you anyway?
I'll tell you everything you want to know. If you come where I am, that is.
Where are you?
Very close by.
Codec calls coming from
Snake,
inside the house.
That's not Master Miller.
Campbell, you're too late.
Master Miller's body was just discovered at his home. He's been dead for at least 3 days. I didn't know because my codec link with Master was cut off. But Mei Ling said his transmission signal was coming from inside the base.
So who is it?
Snake, you've been talking to
Me.
Here we go. Best disguise ever. Glasses and a ponytail.
Liquid. How the... You've served your purpose. You may die now.
All right. So, game released in the 90s. So what's happened in the 90s? Just like we were talking about during the first Gulf War, just look at cable news, 24-hour news cycle. This is becoming a thing now. The news used to be previous to that was like, at the end of the day, you'd have an hour or two of news and that would kind of be it. And now it's CNN is, one of the big reporters during the Gulf War, and CNN is 24-hour news cycle. It's always reporting something. This is where we're getting into the internet, perpetual connectivity. Internet connections aren't always on at this point, but everyone's always connected. The internet's becoming a thing. Like how this affects information and how we consume and digest news and media it's a drastic paradigm shift. Look at this graph. Yeah, if you add a graph to things, people will believe you more. It is though. We can see internet usage. This is where it really is starting to explode. By the year 2000, that's when kind of everyone has a home computer. That's when you have your computer in your kitchen, like everyone and their moms getting on the internet. All right, another quick word from our friend Gene. Disassociation trigger warning. We're going off the rails here. So simulation, simulacra, and hyper-reality. Yeah, how did you guess Sons of Liberty is the next game we're discussing? So simulation, it's an imitation that has some connection to the real world. Like a photograph maybe could be considered a simulation because it has some connection. Photo is indexical. It has some connection to the physical world. It's representing something real. A simulacra, it's like a simulation, but it has foregone any connection to the real world. There's no object at that point. Maybe like a 3D model of an apple. That apple's never existed. It's just always been a fabrication. And hyperreality is the inability to distinguish a simulation or simulacra from the real world. Again, here we go. So, cops playing Time Crisis, that's some connection to the physical world. You actually have cops there. Those penguins are not real penguins, and they're watching a claymation. There's no actual physical real penguin involved. It's more of a simulacrum. We've foregone any connection to reality, like the penguin has never existed. It's a claymation. There's human beings in penguin suits. There's no actual real penguin involved. We've foregone any connection to the real world or a physical object. And here we go. Released 2001. Now we're going off the rails. So this game is amazing because it basically lays out America for the next 2 decades. We got QAnon. The conspiracy theories are rampant in this game. It just never ends. Shadow governments and like AI controlling and social engineering people. There's a lot on information here, all right? But think about it. Yeah, when you control AI, the Patriots, you control information. If anyone is unaware, and if I butcher this, please someone correct me. Game revolves a lot around the idea that they uncovered that, or the Patriots, which at this point is a AI network that controls and social engineers basically the world for their own control. The Patriots having been a cabal of actual people at one point, but at this point they're all dead. And it's just an AI network gone, not insane, it's still working as intended, but like, yeah.
The Patriots. Even I don't know who the actual members are. Are they financial, political, or military leaders? No one knows who the Patriots really are. Even my instructions come from a cutout. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Your office? The White House?
Merely puppets, pawns in a game. By pledging my loyalty, an insignificant son of a senator was awarded the presidency. Of course, that wasn't the only price I had to pay.
What do you mean?
Even if a pawn becomes a queen, it is still just a playing piece. I wanted to leave my own mark in history, but my ambitions were...
Oh my God.
You'll understand someday.
Yeah, all those guys are dead. They're just AI now. Oh, you got something over there? Yeah. Yes.
Something between that and Trump.
Yes. I'm not going to discuss 9/11 specifically, but it would be a disservice to say the post 9/11 America and the culture and the militarism and jingoism around post 9/11 America did not influence Hideo Kojima's works. So that's a good point. Yeah, this is, so, okay. This is, 15 years later, MGS2, Sons of Liberty, comes to the real world. We're just 12 people, there's small cabals of people are able to social engineer and influence the world. You can see here, the article, just a small group of people are behind most vaccination disinformation online. And I'm glad I'm in a room with, mostly vax people, so no one's gonna argue with me on this. But yeah, we can see the kind of prophetic nature of Hideo Kojima coming into play here, where the game was, 2001? And 15 years later, now we're starting to see the ramifications of that, how social media just can control so much of our lives. If you think you're immune to it, guess again. Like, check yourself. Be very cognizant of all the media you consume and all the social media you consume. It is not hard to fall to it. Then we got MGS3. My personal favorite. I think MGS2 is a little more succinct of an analysis of the world to come. But I just love the 60s theme. It's so cool. Released 2004. So in this game, we start to explore like the myths of historical figures, at least in an American cultural context. I think that's the main takeaway from this game, because for anyone who doesn't know, and I don't know how you don't know this at this point because it's been like 15 years since this game came out, games revolved around Big Boss. Not Solid Snake, but the father he was cloned from. And how, there was like this myth, this legend, all this weight around his deeds and all this, and we get to explore like the real Big Boss. Also the analysis of Boss, his mentor, and like the myths and legends surrounding her and how they're deconstructed, and how historical figures, there's different truths that are hidden or come out into the light for the world to know. It's also furtherance of hyper-reality, not so much in like a VR sense, maybe like more like with MGS2, but in a hyper-reality of history and how we start to have to untangle what is truth and fiction in a historical sense. Because we can see, as I mentioned before, Boss was the woman you have to fight. I'll summarize it real quick. Boss was Big Boss's mentor, and she allegedly defected to the Soviet Union. You're sent on a mission to kill her. As it turns out, she was a double agent for the United States, and there was a nuclear disaster that was blamed on her, and the US government sends you to kill her so they can wipe their hands clean of it. She was never disloyal to the US government, but the government screws her over anyway to, absolve themselves of any responsibility.
Finding out where the philosopher's legacy was hidden was to be her greatest mission.
I would never imagine the government would do that.
Everything was going according to plan. But then something happened that no one could have predicted. Colonel Volgin fired an American-made nuclear warhead at Sokolov's research facility. Khrushchev demanded that the US government provide proof that it wasn't involved. They couldn't just abort the operation to steal the legacy. So the operation itself was greatly expanded and revised. The authorities in Washington knew that in order to prove its innocence, they'd have to get rid of the boss, and that one of their own would have to do the job. The public couldn't be allowed to find out about it. Not ever. This, they concluded, would be the best way to keep the whole thing under wraps. The boss wouldn't be allowed to come back home alive, and she wouldn't be allowed to kill herself. Her life would be ended by her most beloved disciple. That was the way the government wanted it. That was the mission she was given, and she had no choice but to carry it out. Her death at your hands was a duty she had to fulfill. Out of duty, she turned her back on her own comrades. A lesser woman would have been crushed by such a burden. The taint of disgrace will follow her to her grave. Future generations will revile her. In America as a despicable traitor with no sense of honor. And in Russia as a monster who unleashed a nuclear catastrophe. She will go down in official history as a war criminal. So, no relevance to American culture at all, right? So that was 2004. Now a decade later, 2016, 17, and into now we're really starting to examine like our historical figures and like their true motivations and what they were actually about. And
obviously, you can see right there, like, we're taking down statues or leaving them up, because now we're re-examining these things and deconstructing the myths and legends and aura surrounding our historical figures. Yeah, wild. All right, so then we get to MGS4, Guns of the Patriots. That music brings me back. Specifically remember getting this game on release, getting off work at 11 p.m. at night and starting it and playing until the sun came up. All right, released 2008. The simulacra has collapsed in on itself. And this is, I think, is a little more overt and a very distinct critique of American culture that Hideo Kojima is doing with this one. Because we have perpetual conflict, an endless war, a forever war, if you will. We have a networked battlefield. Does anyone remember? Show of hands, like, do we all play this or we know about it? Yeah, okay, cool. I would assume, I don't know what you're doing in here if you didn't. So like the guns are all ID'd guns. They're networks, like only the properly tagged owner can use the weapon. You have to find like a character, the Devin, to unlock them digitally. So we're starting to deal with like a networked battlefield. A smart gun, yeah, exactly, yeah. Like I said, hand up, like if you want to add anything, by all means, I enjoy discussion. And also we're dealing with like the war economy. This is very overt. These are things that are maybe hinted at before in previous games, but they're just on the face now. They're right in your face saying, this is an endless cycle of making money off of conflict. And also now we're dealing with private military contractors, PMCs as they're called in the game.
War has changed. It's no longer about nations, ideologies, or ethnicity. It's an endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. War and its consumption of life has become a well-oiled machine. War has changed. ID-tagged soldiers carry ID-tagged weapons, use ID-tagged gear. Nanomachines inside their bodies enhance and regulate their abilities. Genetic control, information control, emotion control, battlefield control. Everything is monitored and kept under control. War has changed. The age of deterrence has become the age of control. All in the name of averting catastrophe from weapons of mass destruction. And he who controls the battlefield controls history. War has changed. When the battlefield is under total control, war becomes routine.
All right. I feel like MGS4 gets ragged on a lot in hindsight. Y'all can get out. That game's great. There's a lot you can deconstruct with this one too. Military spending has gone up and not really gone down. As my friend in the back said earlier, in a post 9/11 world, our military spending has increased and just kind of increased and just doesn't go anywhere. The U.S. military is 1/3 of, I believe it's 1/3 of the world's military spending. Also, speaking of perpetual conflict, we're deployed everywhere. You can see on my graph again, we pulled out of Afghanistan. We're still in the Middle East. Things are still happening. There are active combat deployments in the world. Speaking of the network Battlefield 2, so that game was 2008. So about a decade later, I mean, they existed at the time, but now, it was after 2010, we start to really see the drone strikes, networked battlefield, the information age, and robots. There's no human being there, right? Like drone strikes was a big thing under 2 administrations ago. And then I guess we kind of stopped talking about it. But these are still going on, and yeah, there's just no human being involved. It's just a robot in the sky that flies around and kills people sometimes. Also, PMCs are a thing, and a rising thing. There are thousands of PMCs, private military contractors, deployed around the world on the military's dime, on the US government's dime, right now. Can everyone see the quote, or do you need me to read it out? In the back, you good? I'll read it out. So interviewing a private military contractor, NPR reported, frankly, the political cost of a contractor being killed is much less. It oftentimes doesn't even get reported on, and you can see it simply in the headlines after these attacks, where it will say 3 troops killed. It won't even mention the fact that there were 12 contractors at the time. Contracting is a nice little wild card for the government, because you can say we have no troops in the area, but we can have thousands of contractors. And while that first statement is true, it belays the reality of the situation that, no, we have influence and we're spending money and spending lives in the area. So now we have the Phantom Pain, released in 2015. I don't have too much to say on this one, unfortunately, because I'm still personally trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and there's a little light on story. Language is stronger than identity or race. It examines the cost of ideological pursuits of being an ideologue, and how the cost of sticking so firmly to that. That sweet, sweet revenge, though, it's so good. Like I said, honestly, I'm still trying to unpack this one. Then we have Death Stranding, released 2019. We got non-existent infrastructure, a fractured American unity, and individuals living in isolation. Purely a work of fiction, though. Thank God that never came to fruition. This is a very interesting game, too, because, like I said, Hideo Kojima is an American file. He is in love with American cinema and media, and he has, an outside view of America. So I think he has these insights where, yeah, even when this game started development, he could see the schisms forming in American culture and the splits that would come to reign and define us, frankly, since I don't want to give an exact year, but let's say 2016 on. You can see here, Americans lonely. Also, it's like, how many people, for a lot of this room, how many people do you know outside of work or family obligations, There's no third spaces, there's nowhere to meet people, we're isolated, we don't know each other anymore. I think that's why a lot of us like MAGFest so much, because this is a community built around just not making money, no material gain, just here hanging out, meeting people for the sake of it itself. So, this is just about to wrap up, and this is pretty nihilistic so far, but Hideo Kojima himself did, when he was making Death Stranding, was very optimistic about it. He said this is a game about building connections and building back uniting America. And so I'm going to leave you on his words that are a little more optimistic.
こういう人が友達が欲しいのでネットでつながるとヘッドショットされると、辛いでそういう方多いと思うんですけど、そういう人があのゲームをやってですごい孤独感を感じます。たった一人で道なき道を行って世界をつないでいくんですけど、ほとんど誰も助けてくれません。でそんな中で、おぼろげながら見えてくるのが足跡とか、痕跡ですよね。自分はサムとなって世界を救ってるんですけど、同じような人が世界中に当然このゲームを買って遊んでる人がいるっていうのが分かってきて、でそこで感じるのは、一人だけども一人じゃないというか、なんであのゲームを終えて次の日からポジティブに頑張れるかなと思いますんで、そういう気持ちになっていただければいいかなと思います。
And that's about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.